The following podcast is intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Nobody's listening, no. Nobody's listening, no. Nobody wants to hear them speak. Nobody's listening, no. Nobody's listening. Nobody wants to hear them speak. Nobody wants to hear them speak. Nobody wants to hear them speak.
Thanks for downloading, streaming, or however it is that you listen to the Not Listening podcast. I am Adam.
I am Ash.
And you are?
Well,
How you doing, everybody? Welcome to the podcast. So today we're going to have a little bit of a discussion.
what's in a name?
There you go. What's in a name? So why don't you tweet us at
Normally
Barker
letters.
Podcasts? Smart.
Syllables.
At Not Listening Pod, or go to the website at www.notlistening.co.uk. Right, you ready for the podcast, everybody? Yeah? Good?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Hashtag not listening.
Had a bit of an uncomfortable scenario the other day. So the guy who comes over to service our boiler, our plumber, whose name I can't remember, so I really can't be too judgmental. It might be Colin, but I'm not certain. But because I'm not certain of his name, I don't use it. Now, this is the problem. So he came over and I was chatting to him. I made him a cup of tea and he said, "Oh, cheers, Phil." And I thought, I wasn't certain if I heard him right. So I didn't correct him the first time. So the next time he called me Phil, and the subsequent 12 or so times, it was really uncomfortable. At what point do you actually say, "By the way, my name's Will"? I couldn't do it. I'm too British for this. You can't. I couldn't correct him. He was, he charges a very reasonable rate. He sits at the boiler. He turns up when we ask him. He's helped us out in the past. I can't correct him or
Right.
something like that. How do you do it?
Right, okay, so how long have you known this plumber?
About a year ago, he first came. We had a conservatory installed. It went wrong. This is a very boring story. He came over because the conservatory was put too close to an outflow. God, this is like Ash's decorator
My decorator
story.
story,
isn't it?
yeah.
But yeah, basically, he came over about a year ago to sort something out, and he said, "Oh, yeah, and you pay how much to have your boiler serviced?" So we've had him over a couple of times since to do that.
Right, okay, so you've seen him quite a few times then, right?
2 or 3 times.
And has
yeah.
he always called you Phil?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Right, okay.
I
so-
introduced myself as Will. I'm pretty confident I didn't introduce myself as Phil. I know that much. But, he did well. He remembered Sarah's name, my missus. But he's now got us down as Sarah and Phil. So if he comes along next time, I can't introduce myself and say, "Hello, mate, just to remind you I'm Will."
What you should do, right? This is what I would do, right? These are my two options. This is what I've thought about this, because
Yeah.
you mentioned this before. Option 1, what you do is you start calling him Phil.
Or Barry, or...
No, Phil.
Norman.
You call him Phil. Right?
Right.
So he comes in and you go, "Do you want a cup of tea, Phil?" And he'll look at you and he'll be like, "What? Cup of tea, Phil?" He'll be, "That's
Oh,
not
Colin,
my name."
yeah.
He'll be like, "Oh, sorry, you called me Phil. I thought that was just like a name we called each other, like mate or fella." You all right, mate? You all right, fella? So just called him Phil. "Sorry, mate, my name's Will. Sorry, I thought Phil was like a little name we called each other." That'd be awkward, though, wouldn't it?
That would be
Because
very
he might be like,
awkward.
"This fucking idiot here. What is he called Phil? What
What
a
an
twat."
absolute knob. I'm
Yeah.
going to completely screw over his boiler now and make sure it breaks in 3
Suddenly
months.
the
Or-
service
Gonna
costs
do
3
anything.
times as much.
Yeah.
Let's be more subtle.
I'm just planning to be
Sub-
Phil for the
no,
rest of my
no.
life, as far as he's concerned,
No.
if I'm honest.
This one will work, right? Because I know you'll do it. More subtle,
Yeah.
subliminal.
Yeah.
Next time he comes round, get a T-shirt with a big sign that says, "My name is Will."
Actually...
Those little name badges.
They're written all over the T-shirt.
I
Badge or
could
something.
go one better than that. What I'll do is I'll get a plaque made up to go above the front door saying, "Will, Sarah, Fred and Eleanor live in this house."
So, and
And
you
then they'll
could
start calling me Fred.
You could do,
How you doing, Fred?
you could do something else where you pretend that you've done something really bad and Sarah gets really pissed off with you, so she calls you William.
Yeah.
But then he might start calling me William, and that'll get me just as angry. No, I like the plaque idea. I think there's
Yeah,
merit
the
in
plaque
that
would
one.
More subtle. One more way of just saying is that
I reckon he
am
does
Will.
look like an Eleanor.
Thanks.
But no, you should do that. You should just either start calling him Phil or put a sign that says "My name's Will." Or at the end of everything you say, you'll be like, "How you doing, mate? Everything gonna be all right, Will? Yes. Do you want a cup of tea? Yeah, here's a cup of tea, Will. Yeah, boiler. Did you come sort the boiler out, Will?
Yeah.
Just keep saying Will, and then suddenly he won't realise you're
Even
doing
then,
it.
there'll be that embarrassing moment, though, when he goes, "You're not Phil, are you? You're Will." Why'd you let me call you Phil? Because I didn't know when to stop. And then it just gets embarrassing. And
No,
you
but
don't need that.
It's embarrassing for him because he's got the name wrong. I said,
Yeah, but he's not embarrassed at the moment. It's unfair of me to embarrass him by letting him know my real name.
Have you ever done it where
I
you...
might be rude as hell in certain situations, but I can't bring myself.
too nice.
He's a nice guy.
It's too nice. Because he's going to get to the point where you see him outside of work.
I saw him in the market. And I deliberately avoided him so he didn't call me Phil again.
But it's going to be the case that you're going to have to avoid it for sure, because then he's going to start befriending people you know. You know, it's
No,
not a
but
big
you
city.
could, if you bumped into him in the market, you could. He says Phil, you go, no, it's Will.
That's still embarrassing.
But it's not in your
It's no
house, so
better.
it makes it easier for him because he's just
But it
sort
was
of. he's
only
got
3
it ready.
hours later.
Ah,
It was literally
He
same
gave him a
day.
lift to the market.
Came over, serviced the boiler. Once the boiler was done, I went into town. I saw him. I went the other side.
So you're just going to avoid this man.
No, I'm just going to answer to Phil.
But I don't like that. That's not your name. I'm not going to start calling you Phil. And it's going to be really awkward when he sees me and like he walks up and he's like, "All right, Phil," and I'm like, "Who's Phil?" And I'll make it really awkward. He's like,
Yeah, but I'm not
"What do you mean,
planning to
who's
have
Phil?"
you over when I get the boiler serviced.
Well,
so
maybe
that's
you
not
won't
an
have a
issue.
choice. Maybe I'll make it my mission to be there.
Or maybe you
Support
sabotage the plumbing and keep an eye on the front door.
but what becomes really important that he really needs you or someone needs help, and like he's there to help you, and he's like, his name's Phil. Takes to the hospital when they're like, "This man, his name is Phil. We need to contact his family." And they ring up like your missus. They're like, "Yes, your husband Phil is here." Like, "Sorry, I ain't got a husband called Phil. See you later. Bye." Phone down.
Got it. Now, basically, Phil's my nickname from school, which the missus calls me on occasion. My actual name's Will.
yeah. My middle name.
We need to get this sorted because I'm actually getting a bit worried for you, and I don't want this to continue because I can tell by the way.
Has this never happened to you?
No, because my
No
name's
one's ever
Adam.
called you Phil.
No one's called me Phil. I've done the other thing. I've done it the other way though. Someone that I've worked with for 2 years, sort of on and off. She was in a different department, but we had meetings regularly every week.
Oh, God.
And I never actually picked up her name from the first one, and it was just I always just looked at her and spoke.
Yeah.
So I never actually used her name. It was only when I had a friend turn up at the pub when we were out for drinks, and she was there, and I had to do the introductions.
Yeah.
And I couldn't remember her name, but I thought it was a name. I can't remember what I'd said now, and introduced her as
Yes.
that. And I'd actually known her for about 2.5 years. And she just looked at me and went, "My name is," and said her name, and it was, "Oh shit, sorry." I'm
You're the one
drunk.
I've been really rude to in email. I didn't realise it was the same person. She thinks you're schizo.
You're like, "Oh."
Who's that bitch Anthea?
You should be like, "Oh, you're Phil." No, I don't get that. I get a lot of because my surname's Barker. I get a lot of Baker. A lot of Baker.
Yeah.
I'm like Adam Baker,
You ever
Baker.
called Ronnie.
but no, I never called Ronnie. But I get a lot. But I remember I was at work once, one of my old jobs, and over there Tannoy, it was like, "Can Adam Baker come to the office, please?" And me being like a 20-year-old arrogant little shit, I was
Didn't
like,
go.
"I'm not going.
It's not me.
It's not my fucking name."
Yeah.
So I stood there and ignored it. "Adam Baker, can you come to the office, please?" About 3 times they called it. Someone come storming out. And I don't know what her name was, but she was a right bitch. It's about to name her, but I don't care. And she come around that, and she come across the whole dock. She's like, "Oi, Adam Baker! I've been calling you for the last 20 minutes." I was like, "That's not my fucking name. My name's Barker." She went, "Same thing." I went, "No, it ain't. I went, it's a completely different name." I went, "What do you want anyway?" Do you got your payslip here? I was like, "You could have given it to me."
Why did you? Oh, you brought it. Lovely.
Cheers.
Fuck off.
But did your payslip actually have Barker written on
No,
it?
yeah, Barker's my
That's
actual
the
name.
worst bit.
It's
He
like-
never gets any money because it bounces when it's paying to
Oh,
Baker.
I get letters sent to Adam Baker all the time, especially from like the landladies thing and that, or the housing rent and all that stuff. Yeah, it comes as Baker.
Nice.
So there you go.
So you can ignore it.
And I've told them loads of times, my name's Barker. And they're like, "We don't give a shit." Hey, if you're on Twitter, why don't you follow me at Barker Podcast or Not Listening Pod? You can't follow these two motherfuckers because they don't tweet. Do ya, Will? There you go. That's them not tweeting. At Barker Podcast or at Not Listening Pod. Fuckers, you're supposed to say something in that bit.
Oh, sorry.
Nobody